support agricultural burning unless there are certain applications, and some of that may be insect or weed control for specific pests. And of course, does agricultural burning take place in sugarcane, because it's one of the practices they have. But some of the issues that have come up over the years is lawsuits that have been filed because of fires that have gotten out of control, ash that has ended up in places it's not supposed to be, in swimming pools and in houses and whatnot. And so the Louisiana Department of Ag and Forestry came up with a agricultural prescribed burn manager training that the Ag Center actually does the training, but Louisiana Department of Ag and Forestry does the actual certification. So the training that we're doing today qualifies for certification or recertification if you wish to do it. You're not going to be required to do it. It is a fairly simple, you do take a test. It's fairly simple. It's going to be available online at the end of the day. So if you want to do it, that would be fine, but it's optional. But we do think in the Louisiana Master Farmer Program that you need to be aware of this, because there are quite a few instances that have developed, and this deals with air quality and sometimes even injury. So the Ag Center does the training, and LDAF does the certification, and George Shepard, who works for LDAF, is going to come in this afternoon, and he's going to go back over some of the key points that I'm going to talk about today. And you'll have the option of taking a test, and if you want to take that test, it's going to be graded immediately. Go down to Baton Rouge to the commissioner's office, and you'll be given a card, just like the pesticide certification card, that says that you have been trained and you're a certified prescribed burn manager. So anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the training. Some of it gets detailed a little bit, but we go over it several times in this training. Don't be worried, because before the test, we'll go back over some of the key points that you're going to really need to pay attention to. And but just be aware that agricultural burning can be an issue, even though it's used in some instances. Agriculture burning, is it a good idea? Maybe sometimes it is, and maybe not. Sometimes in Louisiana, we do burn crop residues. The Ag Center, as I told you, other than for sugarcane and certain other instances, we do not endorse it nor recommend it because of loss of nutrients, and creates an issue with erosion. In sugarcane, of course, they use that as a practice. Cornfields, we have a lot of corn that's being grown in Louisiana now, and after the crop is harvested, there's quite a few people that decide that they want to burn the residue instead of disking it in for whatever reason. Wheat fields, especially if somebody's double cropping, sometimes they will make a decision to go in and burn the wheat straw off so that they can come and plant a secondary crop behind it, or a second crop behind it. Also with rice and pasture land, some of this takes place down on the coastal areas where they do prescribed burns down there to manage some of the noxious weeds and some of the growth that's down there that needs to be controlled because of the issues it has with, the cattle grazing. Advantages of burning: it improves the tillage conditions. It can improve sugarcane ratoon emergence. It can increase or speed up your soil drying. It can decrease certain diseases, weeds, and insect populations. We already mentioned that. And in some cases, it improves planting conditions because you're not having to deal with the residue. Some of the disadvantages are you lose your organic matter, your loss of organic matter, because this residue is actually can increase organic matter in your soil. It can reduce your water retention capacity because of you're removing the mulching effect. It can increase the potential for soil erosion. I've already mentioned that. The time, expense, and regulations burning can create problems. You have an increased carbon footprint by burning. And in a lot of cases, like Don had mentioned earlier, we're in an area that's the basic economy is agriculture. And when people from outside this area, even people sometimes inside the area, see burning, it's a bad public perception. So the potential liabilities, of course, with smoke is roads, homes, public buildings, and public utilities. Ash, of course, all the above, and swimming pools. There have been instances where people have burned and ash has ended up in swimming pools, and understand the person that did the burning is going to be liable for all of these issues that can pop up. And then you can actually get a wildfire. You can have an uncontrollable fire line and flying embers. You know, the fires that are taking place over in California and some of the other states, that can actually happen here also, especially if if you're not a burn manager or know how to actually control fire. The Louisiana law states that proper training in the use of prescribed burning is necessary to ensure maximum benefits for the public. As Louisiana's population continues its expansion into rural areas, we're going to get pressure from liability issues and nuisance complaints, and it's going to inhibit the use of prescribed burning. Alternatives we have to burning are the tillage of the residue, as you can see in the pictures that we have on the page. Also, no-till planting. There's quite a bit of no-till or conservation tillage that's being taken place to try to maintain residue on top of the soil surface. Sweep aside the residue. As you can see, they have a rake here, but also we have actually row cleaners that go on planters that can sweep the residue away from the top of the row, so you can plant into it and still get the benefit of all the residue to maintain the moisture within the row. If you must burn, you need to know the facts, and you need to be able to develop and implement a prescribed burn plan. When I've taught this, and I've taught it for many years, one of the issues that come up is that people that want to be prescribed burn managers say, well, just implementing or designing a burn plan takes so much time, but it actually doesn't. To design one for a farm can take very little time if you put the effort to it, and once you design it, then it can be used year in, year out, as long as your farming operation doesn't change majorly. This is the certification. What is a prescribed burn? Basically, this is definition. It's a controlled application of fire to naturally produced on-site vegetated fuels and sugarcane under specified environmental conditions, following an appropriate precautionary measures which causes the fire to be confined to a predetermined area. So basically what this means is that you're controlling this fire into a defined area that you're trying to burn, and making sure that you're following all the precautionary measures to make sure it stays there. The Clean Air Act of 1970 and the Clean Air Act Amendments states it requires EPA to establish natural ambient air quality standards. In addition, certain regions of the U.S. are under a consent decree to have a 5-year plan to address regional haze. Louisiana is one of those 39 regions. LDEQ must submit a state implementation plan to address air quality standards and regional haze. A smoke management plan, which includes agriculture, is required as part of the state implementation plan. Agricultural burning is regulated by the Louisiana Department of Agriculture and Forestry. So as I mentioned before, the LSU Ag Center does the educational portion of this. We do not regulate it. That is done by the Louisiana Department of Agriculture and Forestry. The Certified Prescribed Burn Manager program is a voluntary program and is part of the smoke management plan. So we offer this voluntarily, at this point, so that if people want to get certified, then they have that opportunity and doesn't cost them anything. Open burning is prohibited. This is from the Louisiana Environmental Regulatory Code. No person shall cause or allow the burning of waste or other combustible material on any property owned by him or under his control, except as provided in subsections C and D. Subsection C lists all the 7 statutory exceptions. And these are the exceptions. All parishes under 300,000 can burn leaves, twigs, or vines on private property if you attend the burning, except East Baton Rouge Parish. Parishes that are under 90,000 in population or less can burn trees, branches, limbs, or other vegetative material, provided it does not occur in town or affect the air of the city or the town. You can burn trees, branches, limbs, or other wood as a bonfire as authorized by the parish. Burning of agricultural byproducts in the field is an exception. Controlled burning of cotton gin agricultural waste in connection with cotton gin operations are an exception. Controlled burning in connection with timber stand management, and controlled burning of pasture land or marshland in connection with trapping or livestock production. So there are your 7 statutory exceptions. To prescribe burning law, the Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry shall adopt and promulgate voluntary rules and regulations. Certified prescribed burn manager is an individual who successfully completes a certification program, which is what you're doing right now, and is certified by the LDAF. So once we go through the training or the certification program, then you have the option, if you want to, or at a later date, you can take the test. It's 20 questions, and I don't think you'd have any problem passing it if you pay attention. And LDAF will receive the test, and if you pass it, then you'll get a card saying that you are certified. Prescribed burning as authorized by the commissioner shall be conducted only under written authority by LDAF. That is going to be your certification card, just like a pesticide card, and be conducted only when at least one certified prescribed burn manager is present on site from ignition until the burn is complete and declared safe. That part is very important, I will tell you, because it says that the burn manager has to be present on site from the time the fire is started until it is complete and it's declared safe. And it's be considered a property right of the property owner when conducted pursuant to the requirements of this section. If a property owner, lessee, or any person or entity owning a property interest of any kind, or their agent or employee conducts a prescribed burn pursuant to the requirements of this section and the rules and regulations promulgated pursuant to this section, there shall be a rebuttable presumption of non-negligence. So basically what that's saying is that if you get a lawsuit filed against you from a burn, and you're a certified prescribed burn manager and you have followed all the rules and regulations, then there is a rebuttable presumption of non-negligence to that burn. That does not mean that you may not win the suit, but there is, otherwise then you're at the mercy of your court. I mean, that's it. The requirements of a certified prescribed burn manager is complete the certification training program. That's what we're doing. Pass a written test, perform 5 prescribed burns successfully, and be certified by the LDAF. Now, that part 3 is going to be explained to you this afternoon if you want to go through the training, if you want to complete the training and take the test. And performing 5 prescribed burns successfully, that question is going to come up, and you're going to say, well, I don't know if I've done 5 prescribed. Well, LDAF will be here to talk to you to cover that part for you. So don't worry about that now. I think Sarah, Dr. Shields has already posted up this Louisiana Smoke Management Guidelines for Agriculture. Basically, everything I'm going to cover today is in that brochure. It's available at the LSU Ag Center website. You can download it, or Dr. Shields has already made it available for you to download. You're welcome to do it today, now or whenever, but it has information. It actually has all the forms that you're going to need to do a burn plan. So it's very important. Everybody that does any prescribed burn manager, if you're a prescribed burn manager, you basically have to follow this, every time you do one. There are 7 procedures for a prescribed burn. Step number 1 is the most important, and that's identify sensitive areas, and we're going to show you how to do that. It's very simple. Step 2 is obtain a fire weather forecast, and that's very simple too, and we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to develop a farm burn plan, determine what the smoke category day is. A lot of you may have never heard of that, but you'll know about it after we get through this training. Determine the screening distance, determine the trajectory of smoke and ash plume, and then at the end of the fire, when the fire has been basically completed and you say that it is safe, then what you'll want to do is evaluate the results of the burn, because sometimes things can happen with the weather, wind direction change. You just want to make notes of that so that the next time you do a burn, that you'll have it. And if something does happen that you're sued, if you took note of all of that, you know, sometimes we have no control over the environment or the wind or rain and all of that. So you want to make sure that you do evaluate the results. Step 1, I told you, is identify the sensitive areas. We're going to go over these things a couple of times. It's going to be redundant, but I think it's important so that you basically can follow the procedure for doing a burn plan. You're going to obtain a map that shows each farm and field to be burned. So if you have a farm and it's in one location, or whether it's in multiple parishes or whatever, you want to make sure that you have a map of your farm in the outline area. You want to identify all the sensitive areas adjacent to or within the farm. We'll elaborate that on in just a minute. Each map should show sensitive areas that are within a 20-mile radius. So, you know, the map's got to be, you know, fairly large map. You can actually access maps from different sources. But anyway, you'll want to mark all of them on your map, and we'll go over this in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. The smoke and ash sensitive areas are going to be, these are the areas that you need to pay close attention to, are airports, highways, communities, like towns, recreational areas, schools, hospitals, utility substations, subdivisions, individual homes, factories, and nursing homes. Now, that is not all of them. And you say, well, if I have to identify all those, I'm not going to be able to do a burn. Well, that's not so, because in a few minutes, we're going to show you how you figure out which and what days you're going to be able to conduct a burn and that actually be safe and be within the rules and regulations. You want to be sure and practice caution around utility company substations and equipment in the nearby these fields, because if you burn the poles down, then you're probably going to end up having to pay for them. You want to be sure and contact your local district, your fire district, and notify them that you're going to do a burn. If we were going to do a burn here on the research station, which we do control burns here, is that we notify OEP and the fire marshal here, the fire chief here in the parish, to notify them that on this day and at this time, we're going to ignite a fire on the station, so that they're aware that if they get a phone call, they'll basically know where to go, okay? The next thing is you want to do is obtain a fire weather forecast. And I think this is a pretty cool thing that everybody needs to take a look at, because if you want to see what the weather is going to look like in the next several days or anything, you can access one of these sites. I'm going to show you what it looks like in just a few minutes. And you can get a pretty good idea of what the weather forecast is going to be for several days. And I use it all the time. A lot of producers use it, and a lot of people doing where they're spraying insecticides or other pesticides, they are able to access it because it has some information on it as far as surface inversion, lifting temperature, and those things, which I'll explain, that are very important when you're applying any pesticides. The fire weather forecast, you can get it from the harvest season. You can go on the internet and get it. You can go to weather.gov, go to forecast, fire weather, fire zone. You can go to the LSU Ag Center site and go to apps, and there's Firecast app there. You can access it. Most of the time, the information is going to be available around 9 a.m. every morning. And we're going to go through this in a few minutes, and I'm going to show you, because I've actually accessed the site, so you'll be able to see what they look like. In Louisiana, we have them broken into these areas. You have the Shreveport area, and there is a website that you can go to that will take you to the fire weather forecast. Of course, Lake Charles. Up in Northeast Louisiana, we access the weather station over at the Jackson, Mississippi. So you can go to that site and get a fire weather forecast there. This is what it looks like, and I'm going to show you an entire page in a few minutes, but this is kind of what it looks like. This was done, I think, back a couple of years ago when I was doing one of these trainings. This is for the area, this is for the parishes of Rapides and the Voiles, and you'll see that it gives you what today, tonight, and the next day would be, and it gives you pretty good weather forecast, but it gives you a lot of other information that you're going to have if you're going to do a burn plan on your farming operation. Also, if you look at the bottom, you'll get a forecast for the next several days. And so that's kind of important. And a lot of times that's what you're seeing on the news every day when they're giving the weather. You can also go to the National Weather Service, and that's where I went to on this one. This is National Weather Service in Jackson, Mississippi Fire Weather. You can see how you got it located, or how I located it there. It's pretty easy. You can pull up the map, the entire map of the area that it covers, and you can get information. You can go and click and get what information that you want off of it. But this is the things that are important that you're going to be able to get from that page. And these are the things that are important in doing your burn plan. Up at the top, it gives you the area. So you will pick the area that you're located in. Right now, of course, I'm in Tensas Parish, and so that one up top has got Tensas, Concordia, Catahoula, and all these other parishes. The main thing that you want to take a look at is a 20-foot wind. It gives you for today, tonight, and tomorrow what the wind's going to be, light and variable, and it's going to give it for the morning and the evening. So that's the surface wind. If you get generally what the wind, when they're talking about on the weather, what the wind speeds are all going to be, it's generally taken from 20-foot level at airports or where the weather stations are located. The next thing that you need to be important is your transport winds. As far to dissipate the smoke and ash and move it out of the way, move it from the burn area, then you got to pay close attention to your transport wind, your direction, and your speed. And of course, it gives it for 2 days, all these days. And then this is the category day, the smoke category day. And notice it says a 2. Well, that's very important. And we're going to show you in a few minutes how you determine if that's a good day to burn or not based on the location you're in. Down at the bottom again, it gives you a good weather forecast for the next several days if you're planning on burning. So this is what the fire weather forecast looked like. We've already identified all of that. This is what the burn plan actually looks like. This is step 3 where you develop your burn plan. You put your name of your farm, your address, your location of the farm. Now you can have several farms and in several locations. That's fine. But you basically, if you're burning on any particular farm, you need a burn plan for that farm, especially the areas that are going to be burned. And so you fill out the information, the field identifications of those sites that you burn, or you can add to this. This is not something that you do every time you do a burn. If you've got a burn plan for the farm, you're going to be able to see in a few minutes that you can take this burn plan the following year. If you're burning the same field, then you can use the same burn plan for it. You just would want to make some changes as far as the lower levels of this, which I'll show you, completion time, when you ignite it and all of that. But the burn plan itself can stay intact. You want to take into account any pre-burn considerations, any personnel or equipment needed, any special precautions, any smoke and ash sensitive areas. We've already talked about that. We're going to go into it a little bit deeper in a few minutes. And a notification list. I've already told you, if you've got if you got a fire department or OEP, emergency preparedness, notify them. If you've got somebody living close to the fields that you're burning, I would make the note to notify them so that they know that you're planning on doing a burn. Now, the next information, your surface transport winds and category day, comes from the fire weather forecast, which you just got. And you have what the acceptable range or what you think it is, and that's going to be based on your fire plan that you're going to develop. What the forecast is what you're going to put in there. In other words, if you're planning on burning on a particular day, you put what the forecast is for that day. And then the acceptable range is going to be your decision. But we will show you in a few minutes that that's pretty easy to do. Then you want to put in your surface aversion lifting temperature. That's the SI. It's located at your site, your fire weather forecast. And basically what this is if you have a surface inversion, and I know a lot of you woke up in the wintertime and you walk outside or late fall and you see this haze, this cloud that's low to the ground. Well, basically that's what that is a surface inversion. And if you try to start a fire, basically all the smoke and everything is going to stay at that level until it dissipates. And so it will actually move sideways and create some major problems. And so it won't lift and get out. So the surface inversion lifting temperature is the actual temperature of that day. When it gets to a certain point, it will lift. In other words, that will be gone, and the smoke and ash can go ahead and go up into the higher levels. You want to put in any, a list in here for any possible weather changes, any fire problems, all that. That's in your evaluation. So you don't worry about that right now. Your field identification, it asks you to identify which fields. I've already told you that. The pre-burn considerations, is there any special people or equipment you're going to need during or after this burn to make it safer? That can be a whole bunch of different things. That could be a water trailer in the field, maybe a disc or something, anything that you need as a precaution when you go in. The smoke and ash sensitive areas, remember, you're going to identify those if there's any schools or any type of location that really is of concern, maybe even a subdivision that's got a bunch of swimming pools, or even a subdivision itself. You don't want all this smoke and ash going into those areas because, that can create major problems. And then your notification list, but we're going to continue to go through this. Anybody that needs to be notified about this upcoming burn. Now, all this weather information, the acceptable range is going to be an acceptable range for your surface winds, transport winds, and the category days. These are going to be determined by the grower prior to the harvest season. So in other words, this is not something you're going to decide the day before the burn or the day of the burn. You're going to look at what direction and what speed is going to be acceptable for the type burn you're going to be doing, and what the transport winds, what they need to be. In other words, they need to be out of the north or out of the south, and at what direction and what speed. And then the category day. There are several days that you can burn, and you're going to get the category day from the fire weather forecast, but you're going to have to decide beforehand on that particular field what is acceptable to you. The forecast comes from the fire weather forecast. We've already went over that. And then the day of the burn, what's the actual wind, surface winds and all determined by the burn manager on the day that that fire, the day that you actually ignited that fire. 7 is 3 through 7 are possible weather changes. You want to make sure that any type of changes that the day of the burn take account of all of that. Any problems with the fire or smoke or ash problems, and enter the time that the ignition, in other words, when you started this fire and the time it was completed. And it was completed by who? In other words, if it was a certified prescribed burn manager, that's who did or whoever did the plan. You sign it, you date it, and your prescribed burn manager, you would sign it and date it when you do the burn. All right, here's the smoke category day. So this is going to kind of bring to light all the stuff that I've just confused you with. And it's really very simple, but you still have to follow all the steps. Step 4 is a smoke category day, and this is coming from the fire weather forecast. And you want to make sure that you just burn during acceptable times and weather conditions. The ideal time to do any burn is between 10 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. So you want to kind of plan that ahead. You do not want to burn at night. These are your smoke category days. And so when you go to the fire weather forecast, it's going to give you a category day of a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Category today is a stagnant day. No burning is allowed. If you burn on the category 1 day, then you're at your own mercy, because that is a day that basically all the environmental parameters are not meeting for a burn, okay? Category 2 day is no burn until after 11 o'clock that morning and not before that surface inversion has lifted. The fire should be out by 4 p.m. Day 3 is daytime burning after the inversion has lifted. So if you have an inversion, once it lifts, you're good to go ahead and burn. 4 is burning anytime, so you don't have any restrictions as far as burning. And 5 is generally those days where it's unstable and windy, the wind's changing directions. You get a lot of very good smoke dispersal, but you better burn with caution because the fire can get away from you. So those are your 5 category days. And if you notice, 2, 3, and 4 are days that you can burn. So if you look at, we've already gone over all of these, so I'm not going to go back through them again. Be sure you don't burn late afternoon or night. Now, the number of days, this was back in '99, it took and this pretty much holds today too. If you look at the number of days that you think you can do a burn, you say, well, if we have to follow all these regulations, we're not going to be able to burn. Well, if you look at the 2, 3, and 4, that's the bulk of the days. So there's a lot of days that you can burn. This is just during sugarcane harvest season. So don't think that, you go and fill out all this and all the things that you have to do for a burn plan is make it virtually impossible to burn. That's not so. The forest category 2, 3, and 4 days, there's plenty of those that are going to be available to you. When you're looking at your burn plan and you're trying to determine, okay, where's this smoke and ash screening this? Where's it going to go? The type of burn that you do, and there's 3 types of burns you can do, coupled with a category day. Remember, there's 5 category days. That's going to determine the distance downwind that's going to be adversely impacted by the smoke and ash. And so you want to make sure you identify where all these people and buildings and an impact area are in that area. And we're going to go through that in just a minute with a map and show you how to do it. But the 3 types of fires, of course, a back-end fire, a head fire, or if you're just burning piles and windrows, you see the category days, there's no burn on category 1. But these are the potential impact areas for smoke on a category 2, 3, and 4, and then on a 5. Notice at the 5, I told you it's very unstable and windy. Well, the wind's changing direction, so there's going to be very little impact from smoke. But on the back-end fire, a head fire, or piles of windrows, understand this is basically your screening distance that you're going to have potential impact from smoke. And all of this is in the pamphlet that Dr. Shields has made available to you. When you're considering the distance that ash will travel, understand that your screening distances for ash are somewhat the reverse of predicted of smoke. And the most important weather conditions for ash screening distance is going to be your surface and transport wind direction. So the ash is going to travel basically in the direction of where your surface and your transport winds are coming from. They're going to travel, opposite of where they're coming from. Most of your ash is going to fall out within 3 to 5 miles from the burn site on the category 3 or 4 day, and that's when you have winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Generally, you're going to have ash that's going to fall out for the next 15 to 20 miles out. Now, this is how you determine your direction of your smoke and ash plume. So this is kind of back to basic geometry, I guess. So if you have a protractor, or maybe your children do, or whoever, you can use a template. And I think there's actually one in the pamphlet. You can determine your direction of smoke and ash is traveling from a particular field by looking at the 60-degree angle from the point of where you ignited the fire. And of course, the 7th thing was evaluate. You're going to evaluate the results and success of the burn, make any necessary notation to your burn plan for that field, and keep it for future reference. Now, this is a summary of what we just did. And you're identifying sensitive areas, you're getting your forecast, you develop your burn plan, you go and you look at your fire weather forecast, you get your category day, you determine your screening distance based on what I just showed you in this 60-degree angle. The trajectory of this smoke and ash plume is from that 60-degree angle. So wherever you burn, all you got to do is lay your protractor down, look at a 60-degree angle. It's going to show you the area that can be impacted from where you're burning. And that's the area that you want to focus on. So if you're wanting to conduct a burn, then what you want to make sure you do is have the wind from a direction that it does not impact those. And, you know, looking at the category day and looking at the screening distance, that, you know, that you'll have a safe fire and you'll be able to complete it without any problems. If anybody has any questions, this is what the burn certification looks like. Later on today, if you want to take this quiz, and like I say, it's going to be George Shepard, who works for LDAF, is going to go back over this again for you. And briefly, he's going to hit the high points that you need to know. You have the pamphlet, okay, but you'll fill this information out. The affidavit says that you successfully completed, yes or no. Don't worry about that right now, because he's going to define that. You're going to sign it, and Dr. Shields has that. It's going to make it available to you, and you can just click on there. We'll have your name and everything, and it will be forwarded on down to LDAF for your certification. Good luck. I know it's a lot of information. It's really not hard at all to do a burn plan if you think about it. So look at the pamphlet. It will give you all the direction that you need. Anybody have any questions?